This is the Dzogchen Sende Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. Come, let us meditate like a Jedi. This early morning, let us explore the 11th passage of the meditation classic, The Spaciousness of Dorje Sempa, composed by Gaurav Dorje. So right off the bat, I'm going to do a quick edit. Let's try this again. 1, 2, copy. 1, 2, 3. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, and paste. Splendid. Okay. So let's jump right in. The mind of awakening gives rise to all appearances. Being unborn, it is indestructible. This timeless space of pure being is beyond the reach of thought. So mind of awakening could be translated from the Sanskrit phrase bodhi chitta. And to explain this further, I'm going to drag you, kicking and screaming. Oh, good morning, Galaxy. I'm going to drag you, kicking and screaming, to a set of visual aids. So there are four bodhicittas we could look at. We could look at conventional bodhicitta or ultimate bodhicitta. We'll begin with conventional bodhicitta. Conventional bodhicitta has two aspects, aspirational and behavioral. So what's aspirational mindset of enlightenment? That would be the second fold of the Buddha's Eightfold Path, which is simply a kind intention. What is behavioral bodhicitta? Well, that would be kind communication, kind conduct, and even kind commerce. Or in other words, kindness that affects the mental, the interpersonal, the physical, and the circumstantial. All right, now let's explore ultimate bodhicitta. Ultimate bodhicitta has two facets. That pertaining to conventional reality and ultimate reality. And here's conventional reality. Just noticing things. Let's explore that a little deeper, shall we? Over the millennia, a lot of confusion has crept up about every subject known to man, including mindfulness and meditation. I find that looking at things through the metaphoric lens of neuroscience clears many things up. Let us begin with mindfulness. Every time we inhale, we are already wired to automatically access the middle bit of our spinal cord or autonomic nervous system, known as the hub of our sympathetic nervous system. This bad boy has evolved to help us to notice in a very special way, to help us to vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly notice mind's antics of perception, our ability to see, hear, feel, taste, smell, and the like, including our ability to experience the full spectrum of human emotions, intentions, cognitions, recollections, and imaginings. Everything from the external to the internal, from the physical to the mental, from the pleasurable to the painful, from the interesting to the boring, from the glorious to the grotesque. There are some people, let me jump back, those who tend to be rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel. Are so rigid and so controlling that they feel that we must practice active concentration and active analysis. The only parts of our brain capable of performing those actions in that style would be the dorsolateral and medial prefrontal cortices. They are fabulous tools, but any tool can be abused. Remember Scotty's advice from Star Trek, "I, laddie, the right tool for the right job." What happens if we overuse the front of our brain? Become so fatigued that we begin presenting with symptoms of depression, no less triggering our amygdala, the seat of both anxiety and aggression. So there are a wealth of people who are so rigid and so controlling, and I used to be one of them. They say, okay, we're going to actively focus and actively analyze. This is the way to do it. Well, what do we do when we get cranky? We just do it more. And instead of focusing on our breath or on a philosophical topic, we focus on crankiness. We focus on compassion and its causes and its benefits. And surely that will cause us to be less aggressive. But no, continuing to overwork our dorsolateral and medial prefrontal cortex is going to continue to trigger our amygdala. Who can forget the wonderful scene from Stanley Kubrick's version of The Shining, when the caretaker's wife discovers he's been typing, "All work and no play make Jack a dull boy." So, perhaps that is why Einstein said that creativity was intelligence at play. Our brain needs to recreate. In a De Niro movie called 15 Minutes, his character explains, you cannot come back to a problem unless you first walk away from it. When we look at the biographies and autobiographies of Nobel laureates, we see men and women who spent their lives with focus and analysis, and then inevitably they hit a wall. And the only way to get through the wall is to give the front of the brain a rest. And that gives the brain a chance to access not only its restorative mechanisms, but also its creative mechanisms. True genius comes not from just focusing on one or two organelles of our central nervous system. True genius comes from finding a sustainable way to work with the entirety of our central nervous system, to work with all the tools before us. So we've discussed mindfulness, how mindfulness is not only psychologically and philosophically different than concentration, how it's also anatomically different. Instead of relying on the front of the brain, it relies on the middle bit of our spinal cord. But what do we do with all that stuff that we noticed? That brings us to meditation, which in terms of bodhicitta, which in terms of, if mindfulness was about conventional reality, then meditation was about ultimate reality, which sounds highfalutin. So meditation is a tool with which we cope with that which we have noticed. How does it work? Every time we exhale, whether we know it or not, whether we believe it or not, we are already wired by evolution to automatically access the tippy top and the basement of that same spinal cord. These two regions working together as a team could be described as the hub of our parasympathetic nervous system, which have evolved to help us to physically relax and mentally release as we exhale to such a degree that that which we noticed during our previous inhalation could fleetingly feel at least somewhat less stressful, less permanent, less defining, and even less grasping. At least for a moment, at least to a certain degree, until our next inhalation occurs and then the process resets. The purpose of this is not to help us escape conventional reality. The purpose of this, as with all things biological, is to aid in the survival of our species. After exertion, physical exertion, we have evolved to rest. After drinking, we evolved to urinate. After eating, we evolved to defecate. After a long day's labor, we evolved to slumber. So our ability to relax is nothing contrived. It's entirely natural. And yet, humanity has so painted itself in a corner that it needs to be reminded for the last, well, let me jump back. For more than 1,000 years, more than 2,500 years, humanity has been needed to remind themselves that all work and no play make Jack a dull boy. Let's go back for a moment and look at this through the eyes of archaeology and anthropology. Archaeological discoveries have inferred certain anthropological phenomena that have caused many experts to conclude that our Paleolithic ancestors enjoyed a culture 9 times out of 10 that rewarded for being flexible, loving, rational, laid back, egalitarian, lucid, cooperative, and kind. A culture that essentially helped people to be as groovy as Qui-Gon Jinn. However, after about 2,870, I got the numbers wrong. After about 287,000 years during the Neolithic Revolution, humanity began dabbling or experimenting and embracing a type of proto-capitalism that took human culture, put it on its head, and began rewarding for being rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel. We went from proto-communism to proto-capitalism. We went from matriarchy, spiritual matriarchy, to religious patriarchy. We went from being as groovy as Qui-Gon Jinn to being as grumpy as Mace Windu, and went from being as groovy as the Dude to being as grumpy as the Big Lebowski, as a human phenomena. This is when we see the rise of city-states and empires and slavery and every form of exploitation. And so for the last 13,000 years, give or take, humanity has needed to be told, all work and no play make Jack a dull boy. And so we need to be deprogrammed from this cult of capitalism. We don't need a programmer. We don't need to be abducted. We don't need to be tied to a chair. Thank God. How horrible would that be? All we need to do is listen to our own body. Our body has already evolved to be self-healing. And by all mindfulness and meditation is you and I taking a break from the exhausting habit of actively competing against our own autonomic nervous system and instead passively cooperate with it. As we meditate, we do not force our body to inhale. We do not force our body to exhale. We are already wired to do that. As we sit in meditation, we do not force our mind to notice. We don't force our mind to relax. It is already wired to do that. Then what are we doing? What is the secret? It's simply this. We are cooperating with the process that is already latent. It's like a computer. Some programs work in the background quietly. Some programs work in the foreground in a very loud and distracting manner. What we're doing is cooperating with this wonderful program that has been running in the background our whole lives, a program that could make us empathetic and peaceful, but we've been ignoring it to our peril. Let's return to this morning's teaching text. The mind of awakening gives rise to all appearances. Being unborn, it is indestructible. Unborn and indestructible, unborn especially, is a figure of speech. If we are so rigid that we take it literally, we'll wind up concocting all sorts of weird dogmas. But what if it was figurative? How could that work? Quick review. As we relax into our exhalation, that which we noticed during our previous inhalation could fleetingly feel less stressful, less permanent, less defining, and even as non-graspable as a vast empty void. When I was in 4th grade, my teacher explained to me that a simile is only as useful as it is relatable. Therefore, we have to ask the question, what? What is a real-world example of a non-graspable, vast empty void? How about the illusion of the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless morn, which although could look tantalizing to the eye, could feel non-graspable to the hand? It's just that simple. So, as we relax into our exhalation, whatever birth we might have noticed during our previous inhalation could fleetingly feel like it was empty, like it was not birth. Whatever permanent, whatever, as we relax into our exhalation, whatever indestructibility we might have noticed or imagined during our inhalation could feel rather destructible during our exhalation. There is much villainy, many of it institutional. Even in the Tao Te Ching, which precedes the teachings of the Buddha by about a century, there are passages that talk about the wealthy and powerful living debaucherously while the poor who support them starve. This is not a unique phenomena in the history of human affairs. The taxman can come and, as we saw in feudal Europe, take away so much grain from the farmer that his family starves to death. However, what we're being told in the this morning's teaching text is that our capacity to notice and release is built into us. It cannot be taken from us. As long as we're alive, we can notice and release. This timeless space of pure being is beyond the reach of thought. As we breathe in, everything seems linear and chronologically ordered. As we relax into our exhalation, it feels timeless. As we sit in meditation, yes, we could perceive sight, sound, sensations, flavors, sense, and the like, but we might also perceive memories. We might perceive imaginings. We might perceive thoughts. And so as we sit right now, we are capable of perceiving things completely out of order and completely untethered to reality. That is not a problem. Those who are rigid and controlling would say, no, you must focus on one thing only, and everything else you must shove away or shove down, or you must focus on nothing at all, and everything else you shove down. That is not what the Buddha taught. The Buddha taught that mindfulness was so important. He described it as the seventh fold on the eightfold path and the first enlightenment factor. So shoving things down or shoving things away is antithetical to noticing, no less investigating, which is the second enlightenment factor. This timeless space of pure being is beyond the reach of thought. We want to be, I think I skipped something and I apologize for that. So quick like a bunny, and tap button 9 and drag us kicking and screaming back to the diagrams. So we've already talked about how overworking, mercilessly overworking the front of our brain triggers our amygdala, the seat of anxiety and aggression. And we've talked about how the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems are two facets of our autonomic nervous system, the hub of which is simply our spinal cord. When we passively cooperate with our autonomic nervous system, the anxiety and aggression of our amygdala is calmed, and the empathy of our anterior cingulate gyrus is gently and non-neurotically stimulated. This freedom from the tyranny of anxiety and aggression is not the fruit of analysis. It's not the fruit of focus. It's the fruit of passively cooperating with our body's natural faculties. Now, you might say, one might be concerned that they're being told not to think, to be as brainless as a piece of wood. But here's the great irony. The more we cooperate with our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems to notice and relax in harmony with our inhalation and our exhalation, perhaps every 12 hours or so, the more we do that, the more we cannot help but involuntarily notice impermanence and non-graspability. The more we practice mindfulness and meditation, the more we cannot help but experience greater kindness of intention, communication, conduct, and commerce. The more we notice and relax in harmony with our breathing, the more our choices and utterances and deeds flow, not from contrived there's a phrase, not in a contrived manner, not in a wildly scattered manner, but in a manner that is, which flows from love's deeply centered spontaneity. This could be described as right effort, or effortless effort, or doing without doing, or wu wei, or going with the flow. This is the key to us using all the organelles of our central nervous system in the most sustainable manner. This is the key that unlocks the door to whole brain thinking. You have taken your first step into a much larger world. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this a live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel. For Meditate Like a Jedi is made possible thanks to the generosity of viewers, just like you.